Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Collaborative Culture Podcast. My name is Matt Houston, and I am honored to bring this show to you today. Now, before we get started, please like, subscribe, the YouTube page, the Spotify page. We're in the process of getting in other media outlets. But for right now, we started on YouTube and on Spotify, and you'll be able to see this on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn Live, and things of that nature. So like us, start supporting the Collaborative Culture LLC podcast, as we will explore various topics that impacts society, specifically from a lens of an African-American male who's a professor, who's a father, who's an entrepreneur. So please like us, subscribe to us, and rate 5 stars for us. All right. I'm very excited to bring this next speaker that we have that I've interviewed on this podcast, Mr. Phillip Washington Jr., as we're going to discuss financial foundations for business success, specifically under money management and entrepreneurship. I've known Phillip for some time, and he's not only been a professional in the financial services industry, but he's also given to the community through various organizations, and is creating business opportunities and outlets so people can communicate about financial literacy, financial education within the culture. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with Phillip Washington, someone who has a unique perspective as to create businesses for the holistic foundation of family and for building wealth. And also, we discussed how technology can be a vital part in entrepreneurs building their businesses. And so please enjoy. Again, please subscribe to the page. And without further ado, Mr. Phillip Washington. Welcome to the Collaborative Culture Podcast. I am honored to have a conversation with someone whom I've known for about a decade. Here, he hails from Houston, but he is someone who has moved to the North Texas region, and I am honored to call him friend. I don't call him a frat brother, but he's a brother from another mother, Mr. Phillip Washington Jr. Phillip, what's going on, Chief?
What's going on? Thanks for having me, man.
Man, I just want to thank you for being on with me here. I want to thank also your podcast partner on the Dear Son podcast, man. D, y'all had an amazing unveiling of your new podcast, and please, I would love for you to take some time to share with this audience on our conversation.
Yeah, and thanks for being our first guest for the Wealth Blueprint. So they came together because D has a podcast called Dear Son Podcast. It's about fathers, and mothers can get value out of it too. But he really started as a father, interviewing fathers on Black fatherhood, right, and really helping. What's the word? Because and I know that there's a lot of dope black fathers. The world has a narrative that there's not, right? And so it just was a good way to highlight all the dope black fathers and get different perspectives.
Well, I really took it as it was a great space for Black fathers to just kind of converse, to know that you're not on an island. Now, it wasn't as deep as a therapy session, but it was very similar to the barbershop spirit, right? It's like it was like a gas station. It was a pit stop that you refueled a bit. You learned some tricks of the trade. There were some nuances of fatherhood that you can share to other people, but it was also a lot of nuggets that you can receive from y'all's perspective. And so just having that conversation for me in the time that I was in, when we aired it, we recorded it sometime before it was released. but I really felt that that was the first conversation that really turned things around, and I realized that I'm not alone in this. And I love that y'all provided a platform so that you can hear from different perspectives about our culture and fatherhood. So that's
And,
I
and,
want to
and,
thank you.
well, and let me clarify that for the listeners, because I was talking about Dear Son podcast, which is his, and mine was Wealth Building Made Simple. So the blueprint
Oh,
married the two. It married family and finance, which is what you were on, to blend the conversation, right? Because and that's how Wealth Blueprint was born. It's like the title is intersection of family and finance, right? And so yeah, I mean, everything you said was true. That's you expressed the feeling of what we wanted. We wanted to marry money and marry what he was doing, and then bring it into one conversation, which I feel like you dropped some real good nuggets around that first episode.
well, I appreciate it. It was, I've gotten positive responses. I don't think my mom's heard it yet though, so
Oh, really?
I'll let her listen to it. I typically broadcast it to her television, but last week was her birthday, and
Oh,
so we celebrated her birthday the entire week. So,
awesome,
um, and
awesome.
so, well, shouts out to my mom. She turned 80. She would definitely listen to this podcast, but because I will make her anyway. Well, you were talking about the intersection between finance and family. Your contribution to that, not only that you are a father of two growing boys, you're a husband, but you also are a financial professional. And so you kind of you alluded earlier. You have a podcast. Please talk about the Financial Blueprint podcast that you pump out daily. That you provide nuggets. Whether it's from 3 to 10 minutes long, man, it's something that you can consume fairly quickly, especially on really interesting topics. I remember, and you have random interesting people on also. And so just tell us a little bit about that podcast, because I want us to use that as a platform for our discussion today.
Yeah, what Wealth Building Made Simple. We're over 1,000 episodes, and like you said, it's my little creative baby where I put out content that comes up in conversation with clients, with friends, just things that I think about. But it's a different way to look at finance. I feel like, and I do my best to simplify it and not speak in the way that, there's like financial jargon. You know what I mean? And it's I tie emotions into all of it, because I don't think you can make finances. Let me not say I don't think. It's not possible to make a financial decision outside of emotions. And so it's all about like how to harmonize it, right? How to marry your emotions to your ideas about money so that you can make it easy and effortless. I would have called it Wealth Building Made Easy, but that would have sounded scammy. So I did Wealth Building Made.
Yeah. Well, you drop nuggets there very, very consistently. And so I appreciate that. You have it streamed on your YouTube channel. I see it on LinkedIn. I see it on all the social media
Podcast. Yep. Mm-hmm.
podcast platforms. So cool. With that being said, this podcast today is going to serve two purposes. One, outside of just learning from an amazing individual, in you, Phillip, and how you have made a professional life here by providing financial tools while building community at the same time. You also have agreed to follow up on some discussions that I've had with my students in my entrepreneurship class at the University of North Texas at Dallas, in which I had a lecture on finance and entrepreneurship. And I wanted to have a financial professional just to give your perspective, or their perspective of being a good financial steward as an entrepreneur. What does that look like? And what are some tips that people who are interested in being an entrepreneur need to know before going into the space, or as you're in the space? Who do you need to add to your team to make your business thrive?
Yeah, so I'll start with what I wish I would have known when I was in college, because that's when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. freshman year, which began my journey into studying money. And, one of the, that book is a well-written book. I think everybody ought to read it. It's a very good book. What I and I'm going to blame myself for the takeaway from the early books that I read, but I I assumed, oh, okay, if I just learn this stuff, it's gonna be it'll be like a college degree, right? I'll get it and I'll own it, and then it'll be good, right? I don't, once I have the knowledge, it's gonna be easy to do. And I was like, oh, like in the knowledge of budgeting and money, right? That's super simple because like right, I was a finance major. But then I quickly learned because I've been an entrepreneur, since college, and I've never worked for anybody. I was like, oh no, finances is like life. It's messy. You know what I mean? Like you tend to think that you have this perfection, or I had this perfectionist view of mastery, and I was like, oh, mastery is like being comfortable in the mess, right? Understanding that life, money, finances, business, from my perspective, is more like art than science, right? More like art than science in the sense where, uh, my art is different than your art, and it's messy and it's a process. And the point of art is not to look at the masterpiece in amazement, right? Because that might last for 2 seconds, right? The point of art is to like enjoy the process of creating. And so that's what I evolved to in my understanding about money. And I feel like if I knew it early on in college, I would have had a lot less stress on the journey. Because I would have got there because I'm determined, but the process would have been a lot funner, and I would have probably recognized a lot more things sooner, because when you're stressed, you literally like close off little neurons in your mind, and
Yeah.
you like, can we say retard? I'm not saying retarded, but you like retard. You
You're
slow
slow.
down.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
No, well, a couple of things. One, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was transformational in my entrepreneurial journey. I read it in college. I think that may have been an early conversation that we've had,
Mm-hmm.
and why we probably developed this journey, because that was the book that influenced us at Group Excellence, and someone who also haven't had my first real job that I received the W-2 from was teaching once I became a full-time professor. So that was, 15 years after undergrad, right? And so it's I just what you're saying is something that I kind of resonates with me, because it was articulated from my vantage point, and it started with that book, which also helped change my worldview on understanding that finance is really a language. And so, being a finance major, um, what are some what are some things that an entrepreneur, before they even start their own business, what are some personal tasks that they should do so that they can be in a position to build a business?
Yeah. So I would, on the theme of piggyback on what I said, I think about, and this sounds super cliche because I heard guys say it. I'm trying to deliver it in a way that may drop, but everybody has their own journey, so it's going to drop where it drops. But don't build a business out of necessity for making money. um, because if you build a business out of necessity for making money and there's no love there, then you're doing it solely on willpower, right? And willpower like runs out. You know what I mean? Like willpower is like literally powered on stress, and at some point you become so stressed that it affects your health, relationships. So you can get the money, but I can't tell people I meet today that got the money, but they're so stressed out because they never taught themselves early on that the path to money is supposed to be fun, right? The path to money is supposed to be enjoyable. The path to money is not about sacrifice, unlike what I thought and what people saying. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not um you know long hours. I'm not saying there's not um, a learning process. But what I am saying is, when I look back over my life, I can look at all of my big wins, and all of 100% of them came when I was in love with what I was doing, right? And then the rest of the time, which is a big chunk of the time, until I began to develop this philosophy, was me doing things that I thought I had to do, and like my net return was negative. You know what I mean? Like the love things made up for the negatives, right? But I look back and I go, man, I was just doing that because I thought I had to do it to get money, right? Or I was doing, I was taking on this client because I thought I needed to get money. And once I realized, no, I have like a journal and like a rule I do every single day. Whenever I'm like not clear on something, I'm procrastinating or something, I'll go, uh, uh, perfect example. The other day I was like, I love, somebody wanted me to go golfing. I love golfing to build relationships. And I was like, I don't really feel that statement, so I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? And I don't golf to build relationships. People, you should golf. You should build, but I don't want to. My heart's not going to be
That's just
there.
not your personality.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's just not what I like to do.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because well, one, you said some things that are some strong nuggets that I hope not only the students but our listeners have caught on, because you essentially gave us your evolution of your thought process of working as an entrepreneur, how your people are used to making their hustle their business. And at the time, the hustle's sole purpose was to show the talent or something that they're passionate about, and to create a financial value so that they can receive it. So it's automatically about gaining financial, having some financial gain when they're in the hustle process. But once you get into this entrepreneurship thing and realize that's a hamster wheel that will burn you out very quickly if that's your sole ideology, that you can definitely evolve that thought so that you be more sustainable. And
Mm,
that's when you realize, oh, okay, I'm doing this more for the passion, or I'm doing this for other reasons, or creating different. It's this different language, and you're trying to master that language, which is a more holistic, more a larger lens, more purposeful type thing. That's what I got from it.
yeah,
And
that's 100%. Yeah.
so yeah, no, but that's cool. Um, it's funny because I do see my students, and my friends, colleagues at the Chamber of Commerce leaders. We all suffer that understanding of knowing how much we need cash flow. We need to keep the doors and lights on, and so there's always that science component. But you can't let that guide your creative juices so that your business can thrive. Um,
You know what?
my
And go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead, Doc.
I was gonna hit that point because that's one of the things that so here's a very practical in the box way to think about it. So let's say you're a college student and you say, all right, Phillip just said I gotta find something I love to do. Well, I actually, I love, I'm gonna pick something that's in trend, that's new, right? I love video gaming, right? So are you saying I can go into video gaming and make money? Yes, right. Here's the deal though. There's a gestation period, right? It takes 9 months to make a baby, right? So meaning like there's things that you have to learn about making money in that field that's going to take time. How much time? I don't know. That's why love is important, because if you love it, you're going to put in all the time necessary. But then you go, but Phillip, I got bills. Cool. Here's the easy thing. Um, like if you're doing what you love, there's no rule that says that you can't like find some roommates and live somewhere inexpensive. You know what I mean? Like you wrap your
Yeah,
priorities around, and so you can have a roommate. You can go Uber or wait tables or do something that's light and not super intensive over time.
that doesn't cause as much bandwidth usage,
Uh,
so that
uh,
you can focus on your love or
uh,
developing. What you're saying is your love, your talent whatever you love, the discipline is cultivating some type of strategy to let that be monetized or let that be your central purpose. And that takes a process.
That takes a process.
Yeah. And for entrepreneurs, it's very nebulous, because we're kind of doing a lot of different things. So it's hard to go deep in or understanding that principle, compared to, let's say, yourself as a financial professional who've had to do a series of certifications, or you have to maintain a relevant certification so that you can share financial advice, or doctors, lawyers, accountants that have federal standards that society can see as, well, the amount of hours that they do in their love qualifies them to do this. Entrepreneurs have to kind of create that internally so that they can have that structure to be able to do that. And that's kind of the evolution. That's the change, the thought change, of that. And so that's why, and all of that being said, entrepreneurs who are artists who are not finance based, the best solution for them, from my opinion, is to have a team around yourself. Like you said, it can be the roommates. And so you're creating a strategy to be successful rather than you just trying to go at it just to make money.
100%. And one thing I will also say, and this is I didn't think about it till just now. The biggest benefit of my college professors, because I had like a couple of college professors that were like super smart like you, and they were relatable, and I handled the crap out of them. I was like, hey y'all, listen, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to go into business, And so like I would be in Dr. Fairchild's office. He was he taught finance, but he was also like the finance department chair. And so I'd be in his office all the time. And then he'd be like, oh, well, you call this company, you call this company, you call this company. And I was like, I didn't really call them yet, I didn't know what the companies did, and he didn't explain it. And so, I just read the thing and thought I didn't want to do it. So he's like, Phillip, you said you're interested in helping people with money, right? That was one of my things on my list. He said, yeah. He said, Northwestern Mutual has a great internship program. Like, you should call them. And I was like, oh, you should have said it on the front end, which, he kind of, but I wasn't listening. But I'm just saying, like, I hounded the crap out of my professors and people I knew, and they were like a wealth of information that helped me narrow my list of like 30 things I wanted to do down to like, I knew like I didn't get into this by accident. Like, this was a whittled down list that I vetted with the help of my team or, professors at the time, because I didn't really have they were the smartest people I knew at the time, at the time, yeah, that was super helpful.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, thank you. I think the structure that we have in my class specifically is that I have about 20 students in an entrepreneurship class, and they have a final presentation in which they're building a business plan. They're in groups of 4 or 5. So we have essentially 4 or 5 businesses that will be presented at the end of the semester. And the business plan is it's a simplistic business plan relative to what we see in the marketplace, but it's broken into 4 different parts: your narrative, your competition, your competitive analysis, your financial statements, and your operations. So you're at least discussing what your product is, which are the most subjective that I typically let people express, like a lot of opinions, things. That's where you woo, and you get the attention of your product. But then you go into the more analytical portions, your competitive analysis, in which you not only learn about an indirect or direct competitor, but you also make an assessment of your potential pain points or strengths, right? Then it goes to the financial analysis, in which I desire my students to create 2-3 pages worth of content, whether it's projections, things of that nature. And then lastly, they are to essentially talk about either their operations, on who on their team, what's their responsibility for each team member, or how their object, their product, their widget works from A to Z operationally. So that essentially, and they have to present that and do a PowerPoint presentation for the last day of class. With all of that being said, the principles that you're saying that we're conversing on, I think, are giving them a great direction on how their group can work to interact with those things. My next question to you, if I have it, and please, if you still have meat on the other bone, please continue with that discussion. But I want to tie in on how my after what you've heard, because I appreciate you giving shouts out and kudos to professors. The reason why we're here is so that we can provide. Well, the reason why I'm here is so I can provide real life experiences in an incubator so people can be prepared, right? And so, what can you give them in terms of how they should create context for their financial portion of their business plan in about 2 to 3 pages?
Yeah. That's
What will be
interesting.
important from you as a professional from your lens?
Yeah, I'm gonna think as an investor, like what would I want to, and not that they're looking for investors, but in thinking from the mind of an investor, I think can help better organize your finances. And so, I would want to know, from the finance standpoint, know the cost of your product, right? Like meaning, well, how much does it cost to make your product, right? Make or service your product, right? Like know that cost, and I would like overestimate it. When I'm building finances, it's easy to build, like if you build a buffer into your financial analysis to where if you're wrong, meaning you overestimate it, then if you're wrong in that aspect, then you make more profit when the numbers come out. So I would overestimate the cost of what it takes to make your product. Then I would think about,
what's a good percentage, around what percentage of
you know
margin?
what, man? I'm weird on that. I don't like, so I unlearned a lot of finance stuff that actually, from my perspective, didn't practically work. Because the world's changing so fast. I feel like when you're using percentages in investing, we say past performance does not indicate future performance, right? Meaning, it's like music. You see those people, you see those artists that lose their touch because you realize, oh, they were only good at making money for a period of time, right? They were not in harmony with music, so they couldn't evolve with it. So same thing with business. I feel like, especially now, business is evolving so fast that I would much rather say, all right, I'm going to sell this widget, right? And I think it's going to cost me $3,000 to sell this widget, right? And then I think it's going to cost me $1,000 on top of the $3,000 to market this widget, right? To market and sell it. So that's $4,000 for the widget. Now, my profit margin, right? I want it to be as big as possible, but I would say, all right, what are the markets where I can sell this widget, right? And which market can I get the biggest profit margin, right? If this market I can sell the widget for $8,000, you know what I mean? All right, how big is that market? Is that market growing? You know what I mean? Like, is it, because if I'm selling to a market that is 60-year-olds in this example, and I'm picking that because this is the easier market, then that's a market that is spending less money over the next decade, right? But if it's a market that is 40 years old, they're spending more, right? Very interesting market, at 8,000 a pop. And so I like doing it that way, and
Well, you're assessing the entire environment, and then you are projecting based on the existing players of that environment to determine. So if you're in a space where you need to have, it's a shorter term profit expectancy, one, that business may not even appeal to you, right? Because the numbers don't match. So it has to be, it's a feel. That's what
I was gonna say, and you hit it on the nail, because then I can eliminate products up front, and like some market, and this can go in the finance part, but some market things would say, all right, go interview the client and say would they pay $8,000 for the widget. That's a terrible idea, right? I would much rather go to, let's go to, let's say Matt Houston, Professor Houston fit in my market. You know what I mean? I go to Matt and I'd be like, hey Matt, how much, here's your problem that widget solves, right? Like, how big of a problem is this for you? You'd be like, man, this problem costs me $100,000 a year in my business, right? And I'd be like, all right, bet, cool. I'm on to something because I know there's lots of Matts and it's costing him 100 grand. And when he talked to me, it sounded painful. He'll spend 8 grand, right? Because he's still $92,000 in the
Right,
positive. You know what I mean?
right.
But that's how I might approach it versus doing market, because then you can build a real projection of, all right, there's 100,000 mats, and if we can service, 2,000 of them a year, that's a math that works.
It's an equation yeah. Man, I would love to have to evolve this conversation in analytics and sports, um, in your positions and that. But that's a really interesting perspective and something that I appreciate you sharing, because you show that there is life in the world of numbers, which is a common misnomer. People think that numbers is very dry, very boring, but it's really just a different language. And if you just understand that language, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Rideau, who is he was a mentor of mine. I've known him since I was in high school. He's a retired banker, who's still putting in work to build financial literacy in the community. But he taught me a long time ago that if you just understand how money works, that can allow you to make certain decisions in business that can be more advantageous, or that you'll be on the right side of luck at those certain pivotal times, because it's essentially creating the science of how things are moving in the capitalistic system.
100. Look, we playing jazz now because you brought up another good point. This is what I also wish I knew when I was in college about money and finance. Um, you've helped me express this idea more and more that was like clear in my head. Like, college is amazing for taking wise minds and they are sharpening it to teach you how to apply it to anything you need to in life. So for me, the benefit was less about like the actual material and more about like sharpening that mind, right? It's like a sword, they're just saying, hey, just sharpen your sword. If you can apply it to this
Right.
material, you can apply it to quantum physics. Like, I literally study quantum physics on the weekend because I'm bored and I enjoy it, right? But it's the sharpening of the mind in college that allowed me to mold my learning process to a way where I can tackle that information quickly. Um, I'm saying to say, on the you mentioned something about finance, about money, about business, about uh, um, starting your business. Oh man, I lost my train of thought because I was big up in the man.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I appreciate the shout out. I
I, I,
do.
I'll come back to it because it was something about yeah. Here's what it is. So but what I misunderstood was then uh, not following my own ideas about the world that didn't make sense to me, right? Meaning,
Mm,
I understand now at 40 was those things that I thought at 20 that were dumb. You know what I mean? Like, dumb to me. That's how I was at 20. Be like, this is dumb. Why do we do it this way? Right? That's where the money is made because human beings do things, like the majority of human beings do things because that's the way it's always been done, right? You hear that. Why do you do that? That's the way it's always been done. But then we equally know that things always change. And in the
mm.
change is the profit. You know what I mean? And so
Bingo.
yeah, and so as a young person, you have a unbiased view of the world and you see the things that we do that just don't make any sense. Like, we just do it because that's how we did it. You know what I mean? And so like that's profit, right? When you see it, you go, oh, okay, let me take the wisdom of the older generation and learn the principles and help them train my mind then let me focus that mind on solving these problems that I call dumb, but that are just really new, faster, better ways to do the things that humans have always loved to do, right? And that, I mean, that's how you make $50 million, $100 million, $1 billion.
Well, that's especially in this new marketplace where everything is so hyper evaluated, right? And because everyone's pain point is increasing, like things are exponentially changing in the space. And so if you're college helps you, college equips you with the structure to withstand and pivot at a higher level, or in the Maxwell leadership space, and one of his principles, John Maxwell's principles, it's the principle of the lid, right? I think college technically elevates your lid capacity in your analytical and your thinking skills, because it exposes you to more concepts or to different world views, in a space, in an insulated space that doesn't cost you an equitable exchange, right? You don't have to be extremely wealthy and travel to all of these places to gain these experiences. If you have the ticket to be a student, and those people can be imported in from all over the space. That's another discussion on the culture of college, and how capitalism has kind of created this schism between institutes of higher learning and the value of education, because some of the programs are now being overvalued or overinflated because it's not providing a return. But the principle still exists, that instead of you starting out of high school or starting from a middle school level and you're learning a trade to go deep, if you stay in school a little longer, you can decide to go deep at a higher trajectory, which will give you more resources or more influence or whatever. And so I tell all of my students, look, you don't need to have a college education to be a great entrepreneur, but being in college allows you to understand your marketplace and expands your marketplace potential. Right.
Oh, 100%. It's like I do Thai boxing, and if you wanna become a better Thai boxer, you you can learn the skills on YouTube, maybe potentially, but you really get good by getting in the ring and going against sharpening your skills against better and better fighters. And I think that's what you're saying about college. You can like read stuff on the internet, but until you're like having an intellectual conversation with people who are smarter than you, like at 10 a.m. or at 10 p.m., right, over some drinks or some coffee, you know what I'm saying, some pajamas, and this is all the time for 4 or 5 years or 6 years, you know what I'm saying? Like with hindsight, you appreciate the sharpening of the mind, like constantly.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And yeah, it cultivates your decision making, and the change of your trajectory or the expansion of your opportunities. There's value in that, and so in this entrepreneurship class, I just want to give those students a practical experience so that they can talk to 3 or 4 other people who they aren't normally friends with, at least from my vantage point, as I randomize their team members. So I use a computer, so I don't even know the order of it, right? And so the spirit of it is so that strangers can kind of team build, and create the best one product that the 4 or 5 minds can come up with. Do you have any experiences you'd like to share in your entrepreneurial journey? Because you alluded to this earlier. I want to connect the quick dot. You went from this internship at Northwestern Mutual that your mentor or the advisor was trying to feed you, to working at Northwestern Mutual, in which that's where I met you when you were a financial advisor. I believe you've already were certified in certain courses. I don't know if you were a certified financial planner at that time yet, but you were probably on that track. And we did a lot of work with the urbanly young professionals. But you were also a business owner. You were getting clients, and then you started your own shop. Talk to us about how you had to create your discipline professionally when you started Stonehill
Yeah.
Wealth Management,
Yeah,
or the other businesses that you've created
yeah,
once you left the corporate setting.
yeah. So that's why I call it art, right? So Northwestern Mutual, they tell you, it's more like owning a McDonald's franchise. So you're 100% commission salesperson, and you got your own, 1099, or yeah. I didn't know about an LLC at the time, which I probably would have done had I understood it. But you're a sole proprietor. You sell their products. You're 100% commission salesperson, and that's like what I knew at 21 years old, right? So I did that, and I was pretty successful at it. And then about once I got really good, I met another the best investment, the best investment guy in Dallas, which Dallas is one of the top firms in the US. And so we went to lunch for 3 hours, and this guy made like a few $1,000,000 a year. So he gave me 3 hours of his time, and he said, "Oh, Philip, if you want to be really good at investment, you got to become a fee only advisor, because that's what rich people want to work with. They don't want to work with people who sell products. And here's the license you got to have to do that, right? And it's lots of different ways, but I got my 65, which is the equivalent of having your CFP. And so I got my 65, and so then I ended up, so that allows you to like manage money and charge a fee for advice. And so then I was like, well, Northwestern, that company was a phenomenal company when it comes to insurance products. But I was like, for me, I had to, when I went into a law firm or medical, practice, I would have to tell them, I'm not here to sell insurance. I'm here to manage money. And I was like, this is the liability with the company name. I want to build my own brand, and I want to manage my own money. And so that's when I left and formed. It was a 2-year period of partnering with somebody, but I set up my own firm, Stonehill Wealth Management, where I manage money, I offer advice for a fee. That can be a whole podcast episode, but it was like continual learning. There wasn't a point where when I started Northwestern Mutual, like I knew I knew the direction I wanted to manage money. I didn't know how. Then once the how became clear, I took the next step. So same thing with Stonehill. I got it. I didn't know how I was going to build it, but I would take the next step, right? And then I knew the podcast, which another company I own, came into being because I knew I didn't want a cold call, right? I set up Stonehill. I want a work-life balance because I had my second kid. And I was like, at this stage of my life, I was like, making money was no longer a priority. It was important, but a priority was quality of life. And so I set this up as more of a lifestyle business, which is not normal, right? Like I completely like broke the mold. I was like, I'm not gonna have a physical office. I'm gonna use Zoom, which was it kind of was crazy because you're like, people are gonna give you money and you don't have a physical office, and you're like, it's
And what year was this? Tell people what year that was.
this is like 2016. But I had
Before COVID.
yeah, before COVID. Yeah. So I read Rich Dad. I had read 4 Hour Work Week, which was Tim Ferriss' book, and his book was like big on breaking the mold of the world and then rebuilding it around like what you want. And so I was like, cool. Like I was like, I believe in it. So it sounded like it makes sense. So I did it. And I just and the podcast came into being because I asked myself a question. I was like, if I only had 4 hours to work in a week, how would I make the money I want to make? And I was like, man, I got to reach a lot of people in a short amount of time without having to cold call, do a bunch of networking events. And then that's when I was like, my friend was like, she went live on Facebook, and it reached like, I don't know, 400,000 people. And I was like, bet, so then I started doing that, and then started doing podcasting, and then it started like bringing in clients, and I didn't have to cold call. And so then the podcast became a business, and I'm doing a lot of stuff in that now. And so now I'm in the middle of podcasting, where podcasting is now what cable TV was in the 90s. And I'm like, I didn't even plan this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that was not it, but it's now a whole other entity that's becoming something. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of business. As I'm not saying don't plan, but I'm saying make the priority following what feels good, because I enjoy podcasting. I enjoy creating content. Like, I enjoy attracting clients through this way. I don't enjoy cold calling. I don't enjoy golfing for clients. I don't enjoy going to stuffy networking events with suits. I don't knock that. I just don't like doing that. You know what I mean? And so I don't.
But that's why I appreciate you, Phillip, because you're staying true to your personality personality type, and still maximizing your space in this system, in this structure financially, and it's admiring to see from afar, because I am that guy who needs that social interaction to maximize my space, right? I loved it. Like, I had a golf meeting last week. I took golf lessons. I'm getting back into the golf. I'm getting back to the swing of things, because I'm seeing some value. There's added value because the spaces that I'm in now, I am building relationships with people on the golf course, because that allows me to um, check some other boxes in my quality of life. And so, just to see that from another lens, the potency of success there, to heighten your life. One, it's dope because I see it. You're looking good on the business end, bro. Keep doing your thing. But two, it shows the world that you can be successful in multiple ways, and there's not only one way to do things.
And,
So,
and
possibly breaking the mold is fantastic.
and thanks for saying that, because I want to also make sure that I'm not a hermit, right? I'm not
Right.
a, like like I network, but like I network at Whiskey's, or when we go to date night, we
Yeah.
sit and engineer, or I organize networking events with people that I genuinely like. So I do network, right? I'm hoping they picked up on. It's more like you're saying. I'm picking the path that I enjoy, right? And by the way, tomorrow I might wake up and say I want to do stuffy suits. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not against it. I'm just, you know,
No,
yeah,
no, there was no need to explain, because I understand, especially being married, and I understand, most importantly, that there are other personalities that need different type of motivations or energy to
yeah,
maximize stuff. And so, and in my single days, when I was much simpler in my thought process, I was more linear. I would hear someone who doesn't like networking, who wants to make money, and from my lens, that would sound absurd, because I am a man that believes, especially living in Dallas and being of Dallas, that relationships have value, and it's also a catalyst. So if you don't want to intentionally do that, from my vantage point, it sounds like you want to do more work than needed, which sounds inefficient in my equation. But now that you realize that the world isn't just black and white, there are different ways of thought. And once you tap into how you are, your self actualization of maximizing your thoughts, you can be able to create this innovative thing that will benefit society. So,
yeah, appreciate that.
Phillip, any closing thoughts? I know I want to respect your time. I appreciate you, not only spending time and investing in this collaborative culture podcast for an hour, but you are a friend who really encouraged me to push the envelope. You've supported my classes in the past. You've contributed to my financial portion of my lecture, as well as other financial professionals who's in our circle, namely Trey Carruthers. I want to give him a shout out as well. He's also the designated financial planner. Victor Elmore, with the Texas Mezzanine Fund, was also a young man who who attended my classes to specifically talk about finance. And so thank you all for investing in my students' lives. And just thank you for being the person that you are.
I don't know, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for having me. I'm honored and appreciative.
Good deal, good deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Collaborative Culture Podcast with our interview of Phillip Washington Jr. Phillip, can you give us any things that we can hear from in the future, or how we can connect with you?
Yes, the best way is my Instagram, Ask Phillip. I created my link tree, which has my YouTube page, my podcast page, my newsletter. I have a paid newsletter that I write to every single day. But if you go to my Ask Phillip Instagram page, my link has links to everything I'm doing there.
Phillip, thank you very much. We'll put your link tree in the description so that people can follow you. Thank you, brother. Thanks for this discussion. Thanks for your assistance. And keep doing what you do.
All right, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
All right, peace.